6 weeks after the stroke took the left side of her body, Dorothy Vance's 3 daughters decided one by one, in 3 separate phone calls, over the span of 9 days, that they could not take her in. The boy across the street was 16. He did not know her name yet. He would learn it the morning he watched 3 oranges roll down her front steps, while she sat there with one hand that worked and no one coming. He picked up the oranges. He carried the bags. He said, "Yes, ma'am." Then he went to school. He did that every morning for 2 years. She did not know yet what she would leave him. He did not know yet what she had been keeping under her bed for 34 years. Dorothy Eleanor Vance was a school nurse for 34 years. She worked at Carver Elementary on the south side of Memphis, in a small room with a cot and a cabinet and a window that faced the parking lot. The room smelled like rubbing alcohol and peppermint candy. The peppermint was hers. She kept a bowl of it on her desk and a handful in the pocket of her white coat, and she gave them out to children who cried, which was most of them, and to children who did not cry, which was the ones she watched carefully. She called every child baby. The boys, the girls, the quiet ones, the loud ones. Baby, come, sit down. Baby, let me see that knee. Baby, when did you last eat? That was how you could tell which question was the real one. She asked the last one the most. She made $12 an hour for the first 12 years and $19 an hour for the last 5. She bought sandwiches for children whose names she learned by memorizing which cubby was empty at lunchtime. She did not tell anyone she was doing it. She did not put in for reimbursement. The school did not have a fund for that. She had a checking account and a budget, and she moved money from one line to another until it worked out. It always worked out. She called parents. She wrote notes. She held ice to the back of a 4th grader's neck for 40 minutes once, while the girl told her what was happening at home. And when the girl stopped talking, Dorothy wrote down everything on a piece of yellow paper and walked it to the principal's office herself. The girl did not go home that afternoon. The girl is 41 years old now and teaches 2nd grade in Nashville and has never stopped writing Dorothy a Christmas card. Dorothy kept those cards. She kept all of them. She retired at 67. The school was supposed to throw her a party. The party got cancelled because the district pulled the budget the week before. Nobody told her until the Friday. The principal apologized. Dorothy said it was fine. She said it like she meant it, which she mostly did, and she spent her last afternoon alone in the nurse's office, packing 34 years of things into 2 cardboard boxes. The boxes held what you would expect: a framed certificate, a coffee mug a child had painted for her in 1998, 3 binders of emergency protocols, a spare cardigan she kept on a hook for cold days, the bowl of peppermints empty now, the last handful given away that morning. She carried the boxes to her car one at a time because her shoulder had been bothering her. She put them in the trunk. She drove home to the house on Bellevue Street, the small brick house. She did not open the boxes. She set them down in the hallway and walked past them to the bedroom. Under the bed was a safe. It was old. Her father had bought it in 1972, and she had inherited it when he died, and it had lived under that bed for most of her adult life. She had a key on a ring in her dresser drawer. She got the key. She opened the safe. She put something inside. She locked it. She did not open it again for 4 years. The boxes stayed in the hallway for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she carried them to the spare room and stacked them in the closet and closed the door. That was the end of 34 years. Nobody called to check on her that week. Her 3 daughters did not know she had retired. She had not told them. She figured they were busy. She figured she would mention it next time they called. Dorothy had 3 daughters. They all left in their own way at their own speed for their own reasons. None of them left badly. That is what made it worse later. Denise was the oldest. She left first. Denise left Memphis at 22 for a job in Nashville. She had a degree in accounting and a fiancé with a plan and the kind of drive that does not look back because looking back slows you down. She married the fiancé. She divorced him 9 years later. She married someone else, a man named Richard, who managed a car dealership, and she built a life in a subdivision outside Nashville, with a lawn her husband cut on Saturdays, and a daughter who went to private school. Denise called her mother every Sunday, 15 minutes, sometimes 20. She asked about the weather. She asked if Dorothy was eating. She said, "I'll try to come visit soon." She said it every Sunday for 19 years. She never came. She always meant to. Denise was not a bad daughter. She loved her mother. She just loved her from Nashville, which is 210 miles from Memphis. And 210 miles is the kind of distance that turns love into something abstract. Abstract love is easy to postpone. You can postpone it forever and still feel on Sunday afternoons that you are a person who loves your mother. Brenda was the middle one. She left Memphis at 20 for Atlanta. Brenda sold real estate. She was good at it. She wore good shoes and carried a leather planner and drove a car that cost more than her mother's house. She sent Dorothy $200 on the first of every month through Zelle. She had been doing it for 12 years. She never called when she sent the money. The money was the call. That was what money was for in Brenda's head. Money was how you said, "I love you," without having to listen to what the other person said back. Dorothy would text, "Thank you, baby," and Brenda would send a thumbs up, and that was the conversation. Brenda had never asked her mother what she needed. Brenda sent what Brenda wanted to send. $200 a month was generous by Brenda's math, and it was, and it meant nothing, in the only currency that mattered, which was presence, and Brenda did not know that currency existed. Cheryl was the youngest. She left last. She left hardest. Cheryl stayed in Memphis until she was 37. For 5 of those years, from the time Dorothy turned 62 until she turned 67, Cheryl was the only one. She drove her mother to doctor's appointments. She cleaned the house on Saturdays. She cooked on Saturdays. She sat in the kitchen on Saturdays and listened to her mother tell the same 3 stories she had told 50 times before, and she laughed in the same 3 places she had always laughed, because her mother was proud of those stories, and her mother deserved someone to be proud with her. Denise did not fly in. Brenda added $50 to the Christmas transfer. Nobody helped Cheryl. Nobody asked if she needed help. Everyone assumed Cheryl had it handled because Cheryl was there, and being there was its own announcement that you had signed up for all of it. In year 4, Cheryl stopped sleeping through the night. In year 5, she started crying in her car in her mother's driveway before she went inside. Not because she did not love her mother, because she was tired and nobody could see that she was tired. When her husband got the offer in Charlotte, Cheryl saw a door. She walked through it. The last Saturday, before she left Memphis, Cheryl sat in her mother's kitchen and watched her mother make tea. She did not tell her she was leaving. She told her the following Wednesday by phone from Charlotte. She could not say it while looking at her mother's face. 3 daughters, 3 different ways of leaving. Denise left because the miles made it easy. Brenda left because money was the language she knew. Cheryl left because she had been carrying it alone for 5 years, and her shoulders had given out. Nobody had ever taught any of them how to share a mother. Nobody had ever sat them down and said, "This is a job for 3, not 1, and the one of you nearest by does not automatically get assigned." So the 3 of them did what people do when nobody teaches them. They defaulted. They drifted. They sent what they could send from where they were. And Dorothy, in her small brick house on Bellevue Street, kept making tea on Saturdays, even after there was nobody coming to drink it. It happened on a Tuesday, 7:20 in the morning. Dorothy was watering the begonias on the porch the way she had watered them every morning for 41 years when her left hand let go of the watering can. She did not drop it on purpose. She just stopped holding it. The can hit the porch, and the water ran across the boards and down the steps and pooled on the walkway, and Dorothy stood there for a moment, trying to understand why her hand had done that. Then her left leg stopped listening too. She did not fall. She sat down. She lowered herself onto the top step, the way you lower yourself into a chair you do not trust. Slow and careful, one hand on the railing and the other flat on the wood beside her. She sat there with her left side feeling like it belonged to somebody else, and she watched the water run down to the sidewalk. Her neighbor across the street, a woman named Patricia, who had lived there 19 years and waved at Dorothy every morning, without ever once knocking on her door, came out to get her newspaper and saw Dorothy sitting on the steps at 7:20 in the morning, with the watering can on its side and her left arm in her lap. Patricia walked across the street. Patricia called 911. The hospital kept her 4 days. The diagnosis was a minor stroke, mild left side hemiparesis. They told her she would need help with daily living for at least 6 months, possibly longer, possibly for good. They told her she would not be able to drive for a while. They told her she would need to think about who could stay with her. The hospital social worker brought her a phone on the second day. Dorothy had her daughter's numbers memorized. She called Denise first. Denise answered on the 4th ring. The hospital noise must have come through the line because Denise said, "Mama, where are you? Are you okay?" And Dorothy explained, slow and even, what had happened. There was a pause. Dorothy could hear a television in the background. Then Denise said, "Mama, I wish I could, but Richard just started a new job and we don't have the space right now. Maybe in a few months once things settle. I'm going to look at it, I promise." The pause before the answer had been about 3 seconds long. The answer itself sounded like something Denise had been turning over in her head for a long time, like she had been preparing for this call for years, and now that it had come, all she had to do was read what she had already written. Dorothy said, "Okay, baby." She called Brenda next. Brenda picked up on the 2nd ring and said, "Mama, hi, can it be quick? I'm at a closing." Dorothy said it would be quick. She told her about the stroke. Brenda's voice changed, but only the way a voice changes when somebody knows the right shape of concern to put on. Brenda said, "Oh my God, Mama." Okay. Listen, I can increase the monthly to 300, and I'll look into home care services this afternoon. There are agencies for this. We'll find somebody good. Brenda did not say she would come. She said she would find somebody. She said it the way a person says they will find a contractor. Dorothy said, "Thank you, Brenda." Her voice was flat, not warm, not cold, just flat, the way a voice goes when it has used up the energy to be anything else. She called Cheryl last. Cheryl was the one she had thought hardest about calling. Cheryl was the one she had hoped she would not need to. The phone rang once, twice, 5 times. Dorothy almost hung up. Then Cheryl picked up and said, "Mama," Dorothy told her. The silence on the other end of the line was long enough that Dorothy looked at the screen to make sure the call had not dropped. She could hear Cheryl breathing, slow, the kind of breathing a person does when they are trying to keep from making a sound. The silence lasted maybe 20 seconds. It felt longer. Then Cheryl said, "I just can't do this right now." She did not give a reason. She did not say Charlotte. She did not say her husband, her job, her schedule, her own life. She did not say "I'm sorry." She did not say "I love you." She said 5 words, and she stopped. "I just can't do this right now." Dorothy did not ask her why. Dorothy already knew why. Dorothy had known for 5 years and had never said it out loud to anyone, not even to Cheryl, especially not to Cheryl, because saying it would have made Cheryl feel worse than she already did. And Dorothy had never wanted to be the kind of mother who made her daughter feel worse. So she said the only thing she could say. She said, "All right." The line went quiet again. Then it clicked. Dorothy lowered the phone to her lap. She sat there in the hospital bed, with the rails up on both sides, and the IV in her good arm, and the television on a news channel with the sound off. The nurse came in to check her vitals. The nurse was young, maybe 26, and she looked at Dorothy and at the phone and asked, gentle, the way you ask somebody who has just gotten bad news, "Is there anyone else you want to call, miss?" Vance, Dorothy, looked up at her. "No, thank you," she said. That was everybody. The nurse stood there a second longer than she needed to. Then she nodded and wrote something on the clipboard and left. Dorothy stayed in the bed with the phone face down on the blanket. She did not cry. She did not move. She looked at the window. The window faced the parking lot. There was nothing in the parking lot worth looking at. She looked at it anyway. That was Tuesday afternoon around 3. By Friday, she was home. The house on Bellevue Street had not changed. Nobody had moved anything. The watering can was still on the porch where she had dropped it dry, now tipped over on its side. Patricia, from across the street, had picked up the mail and stacked it on the kitchen counter. There was a casserole in the refrigerator with a sticky note on it that said, "Heat at 350 for 30 minutes. You don't have to write back. Patricia." Dorothy stood in the kitchen for a long minute, looking at the casserole. Then she sat down at the table and tried to open the bottle of medication the hospital had given her. The cap was child-proof. You needed 2 hands. She tried to brace it against her chest with the weak arm. The arm could not hold pressure. She switched and tried to brace it against the table and twist with her good hand. The cap slipped. She tried again. The cap slipped again. It took her 3 minutes to open 1 bottle of pills. That was the new clock. That was the new measurement of everything from now on. The trip from the bedroom to the kitchen used to be 30 seconds. It was 4 minutes now. Pouring a glass of water with one hand was a project. Buttoning a shirt was a project. Putting on socks was a project that sometimes she just did not finish. She wore the same pair of slip-on house shoes for 6 days in a row, because reaching down to deal with shoes was a battle she did not want to lose first thing in the morning. She could not drive. She could not lift 2 grocery bags. She could not climb the 3 steps up to her own front door without holding the railing with the only hand that worked. She started ordering taxis. $12 to the grocery store, $12 back, $24 a trip, 2 trips a week. The math added up faster than she wanted to think about. Brenda's $300 a month barely covered groceries and the rides to get them. It was on a Thursday. The second bag was going to be a problem. She tried to lift it with her left hand. The hand closed around the handle but would not hold. The bag slipped. It hit the bottom step and it tipped, and 3 oranges came out of the top. The oranges rolled down the steps one at a time. She watched them go. She lowered herself onto the bottom step with the first bag still in her good hand. She did not call anyone. She did not have anyone to call. She just sat there with her one working hand wrapped around the handle of a grocery bag and watched her oranges roll across the sidewalk in the cool grey light of a Memphis morning at 6:15. From the window of the house across the street, a boy she had never spoken to watched her sit there. His name was Elijah James Turner. He was 16 years old. He lived in the small greenhouse directly across from Dorothy's, the one with the porch swing that creaked in the wind and the basketball hoop in the driveway that nobody used anymore. He lived there with his mother, Nadine. His mother worked the late shift at a barbecue place on Beale Street, prepping ribs and cleaning grills until 2 in the morning, and she got home at 3, and she slept until 10. Elijah made his own breakfast. He had been making his own breakfast since he was 11. His father had left when Elijah was 4. He did not remember much about him. A voice, maybe. A pair of brown work boots by the door. Then the boots were gone, and the voice was gone. And his mother started working 2 jobs, and Elijah learned how to be quiet in the mornings. He was an average student, C+B-. He did not play any sports. He did not have a group. Teachers did not write his name on the board for being good or bad. He sat in the 3rd row by the window in most of his classes, and he turned in his work on time, and he did not raise his hand much. The school counselor would not have been able to pick him out of a yearbook. He had one thing, though. He had one thing that 16-year-old boys are not famous for having. He noticed people. He picked up trash on the way to school, not because anyone asked him to, and not because he was trying to be a good person, but because he saw the trash there and his hands were free. He held doors for the kids behind him without looking back to see who they were. When the cafeteria lady forgot to put a fork on his tray, he did not say anything, because he could see she was tired, and he ate his macaroni with a spoon. He did not tell anyone he had done that. He just did it. That was Elijah. He watched Dorothy sit on her steps for maybe 45 seconds. The orange that had rolled the farthest had stopped against the front tire of his mother's parked car. He looked at the orange. He looked at the woman. He set down his backpack on the front porch. He walked across the street. He picked up the orange by his mother's tire, then the one in the grass, then the one on the sidewalk. He carried them in the crook of his arm up to the bottom step where Dorothy was sitting. He did not say anything yet. He bent down and picked up the second grocery bag that had tipped over, and he gathered the loose things back into it. A box of crackers, a can of green beans, a pack of chicken thighs in plastic. He put the oranges back in last. Then he carried both bags up the 3 steps and set them down by the front door. Dorothy was still sitting on the bottom step. She turned her head to look up at him. "Thank you, baby," she said. "Yes, ma'am," Elijah said. He walked back down the steps and across the street. He picked up his backpack from his porch. He went to school. He thought about her all day in third period algebra. The next morning, he was outside at 6:10. He sat on his front porch with his backpack between his feet, and he waited. 6:10, 6:15, 6:20. No taxi pulled up. The street was empty. He sat there until 6:30, and then he walked across the road and rang the doorbell. Dorothy answered slow. She was wearing a housecoat and her hair was pinned back, and she looked at him through the screen for a moment before she pushed the door open. "You need me to go to the store for you," Elijah said. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he said. That was it. That was the whole conversation. She gave him a list, written in shaky block letters on the back of a grocery receipt, and $40 in cash, and he walked the 8 blocks to the Kroger on Lamar, and he came back 40 minutes later with 2 bags and the change. He set the bags inside the door. He gave her the change. He went to school. He did not tell anyone at school. He did not tell his mother. He did not put it on his Snapchat because he did not have a Snapchat. He just started walking to school 20 minutes earlier in the morning because the trip to the store added 20 minutes. And when one of his classmates asked him on the second week why he was getting to school so early, he said, "I just like walking in the morning." That was the whole explanation. He did the same thing the next day, and the next, and the next. 2 years passed. That is the part of the story that does not have a single big moment in it, and that is also the part of the story that mattered most. In the fall of the first year, Elijah noticed the bottom step on her porch was loose. He did not mention it. He came back on a Saturday afternoon with a hammer he had borrowed from the toolbox under his mother's kitchen sink and a handful of 3-inch nails he had bought himself for $4.37 at the hardware store on Lamar. He pulled the step up. He saw the wood had rotted underneath. He went back to the hardware store. He came back with a piece of pine cut to length. He fixed it. It took him most of the afternoon. Dorothy made him a peanut butter sandwich and watched from the kitchen window. When he was done, she came outside and stood on the step and pressed down with her good foot, and the wood did not move. She said, "That step has been loose since Bush was in office." Elijah said, "Which one?" She laughed. It was a small laugh. It was the second one. She had laughed since the stroke. That was when she started making the tea. Earl Grey. She had a tin of it in the cabinet she had not opened in years. She started boiling water on Saturday afternoons around 3 o'clock, because that was when Elijah usually came by, after his shift bagging groceries at the Kroger on Lamar, and she would set out 2 cups, and he would knock once and let himself in, and they would sit at the kitchen table and drink tea that he did not particularly like, but that he never said he did not like. Winter came. The first snow that year was light, just enough to dust the sidewalks, and Elijah cleared her walkway with a shovel before he cleared his own. The second snow was heavier. He came over at 5:30 in the morning with the shovel and the salt, and he did her steps and her walkway and her driveway before he touched his mother's. Nadine watched him from the kitchen window the second morning and did not say anything. She had been wondering about the early mornings for a year by then, and she had decided some time ago that whatever her son was doing across the street, it was something she did not need to interrupt. Spring came! Dorothy taught him how to make red beans and rice. She walked him through it on a Saturday afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table, with her good hand wrapped around her tea, calling out the next step every few minutes, while he stood at the stove. She told him to use the andouille, not the cheap stuff. She told him about the Holy Trinity onion and bell pepper and celery, and how you cook them slow until they go soft and sweet. She told him you put the bay leaves in early and you take them out before you serve. Elijah followed every instruction, and the rice came out fine, and the beans came out so salty, his eyes watered when he tasted them. He had used a tablespoon of salt where the recipe called for a teaspoon. Dorothy laughed, out loud, from the chest, the kind of laugh that has been waiting somewhere in a person for a long time. It was the first time she had really laughed since the stroke. She said, "Baby, you tried to season the whole block." He started laughing too. They ate the rice with no beans. They threw the beans away. He made it again the next Saturday and got it right. Saturdays became the shape of the week. He told her about school, about the algebra teacher who pronounced his name wrong for a whole semester and never corrected himself about the kids in his lunch period, who he was not friends with, but who were not unkind about a girl named Tasha who he thought was pretty and had said 3 words to in 2 years. Dorothy listened. She did not give advice unless he asked. When he asked, she gave it short and clear, and then she let it go. She told him about Carver Elementary, about the children whose names she remembered, about the principal in 1996 who tried to fire her over the sandwich money, and how the parents had called the school board, and how the principal had stopped trying, about the day she had walked a 4th grade girl to the office with a yellow piece of paper in her hand, and how she still got Christmas cards from that girl 41 years old now. He listened. He had never met an adult who told him the truth about being an adult. In the spring of the 2nd year, on a Saturday in April, Dorothy asked him about college. He was a junior. He would graduate the next year. He looked at his tea. He said his grades were okay. He said he wanted to go. He said his mother could not afford it, and that the financial aid would not cover everything, and that he had been looking at the local community college because it was cheaper, and that his mother kept telling him to apply to the 4-year schools anyway, and he kept telling her not to get her hopes up. He said, "I'll figure it out." Dorothy looked at him for a long time, long enough that he looked up from his tea to see why she had gone quiet. "I know you will," she said. He nodded once. He did not say anything else. He drank his tea. That night, Dorothy went into her bedroom. She got down on the floor, slow the way she did, everything slow now, and she pulled the safe out from under the bed. She opened it. She took something out. She wrote a name on a piece of paper and a number underneath it. She put the paper inside the safe with everything else. She locked it again. She slid it back under the bed. She did not tell him. She did not tell anyone. She would not open it again for another year. It was a Saturday in late May. Elijah came over at 3. He brought the grocery bags in and put them on the counter and took his usual seat at the kitchen table. The kettle was already on. The tea was already out. Dorothy sat across from him with her good hand wrapped around the handle of her cup, and she did not start talking right away. She said, "Baby, I want you to come back to the bedroom with me for a minute." He followed her down the hall. She moved slow. He walked slower. She kneeled down beside the bed the way she always did, now one hand on the mattress for balance, and she slid the safe out from under it. She put the key in. She turned it. She opened it. Then she stood up and stepped back and said, "Go on." Elijah looked at her. Then he looked at the safe. It was full of paper. He lifted out the top bundle. It was letters. Hundreds of them, tied in groups with rubber bands stacked on top of each other in no particular order. Some on yellow-lined paper, some on cards, some on folded notebook pages with spiral-ripped edges. He picked up one at random. A woman's handwriting. It said, "Nurse Vance, I was in 4th grade when you walked me to the office with the yellow paper. I am 41 now. I am a teacher. I have been writing you every Christmas for 32 years. I don't think I ever said thank you out loud. Thank you." He picked up another. A man this time. It said, "You were the only adult at that school who ever asked me if I was okay." Another. "I became a teacher because of you." Another. "You bought me lunch for 2 years and never said a word about it to anybody. I think you were the first person who ever showed me what grown-up love looked like." Elijah read 5 of them. Then he set them down on the bed, and he did not pick up any more. He looked at Dorothy. She said, "This is what I did for 34 years. This is what it was worth. Not the money, not the party they never threw. These." He nodded. He did not trust his voice. She said, "There's something else in there." He reached back into the safe. Underneath the letters was a plain white envelope from First Tennessee Bank. His hands had started to shake a little. He opened it. It was a statement. A $529 college savings plan. The name on the account was Elijah James Turner. The opening date was 2 years earlier, the same month he had first walked across the street and picked up 3 oranges from her sidewalk. The balance was $47,211. He read the number twice. He put the paper down on the bed. He did not speak for a long time. Dorothy waited. The water in the kettle had stopped boiling, and neither of them got up to pour it. He said, "Miss Dot, I can't take this." She said, "You already did." He looked at her. She said, "2 years ago, when you picked up those oranges." He looked down at the letter. He looked at the stack of notes on the bed. He looked at the safe on the floor. He thought about his mother working nights and coming home at 3 in the morning. He thought about the application to the local community college he had already filled out online because that was what he could afford. He thought about the word he had used every time Dorothy had said he did not have to help her. The same 2 words, over and over for 2 years. "I know." He said it now. Quiet. Different weight than the first time. Different weight than the second. "I know." Dorothy nodded. That was all. He sat down on the edge of the bed because his legs would not hold him standing. She stayed where she was by the dresser, one hand on top of it for balance. The room was quiet. A car passed on Bellevue Street. A dog barked 2 houses down. He did not cry the way people cry in movies. He cried the way a 16-year-old boy cries when nobody has ever really seen him before, and now somebody has, and she has put a number on it, and the number is his whole future. He put his hands over his face, and his shoulders shook once, and then he stopped. Dorothy crossed the room and put her good hand on the back of his head. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. The letters were on the bed between them, hundreds of strangers who had written to her across 34 years to tell her she had mattered, and the boy across the street was the one she had chosen to hand them to because he was the one who had shown up. If this story made you think about someone who shows up for others without being asked, send it to them. They probably don't hear it enough. Not because the world is unkind, because the people who just show up are the hardest people to remember to thank because they never ask to be. And if this story made you think about someone you have not called in a while, don't text them. Call them. There is a difference. A text is something you send when you want to feel like you did something. A call is something you do when you want the other person to feel like they matter. Your mother knows the difference. Your grandmother knows the difference. The person on the other end of that phone has known the difference the whole time. Now here is the question this story leaves on the table, and I already know it is going to split the room. Dorothy left everything to a neighbor's teenage son. A college fund. Her house. Every single thing she had left. and she left nothing to her 3 daughters. But one of those daughters spent 5 years taking care of her before she broke. 5 years alone, while the other 2 stayed gone. So here is what I want you to sit with. Was Dorothy right to leave Cheryl out with the other 2? Or should she have treated Cheryl differently because Cheryl had already given more than anyone had a right to ask of her? Is it fair to punish the one who stayed the longest just because she could not stay forever? Or is fair a word that only applies to people who showed up at all? Leave your answer below. I want to read them. This is not a simple one. Subscribe. See you in the next one.